We got to figure out why we're upset. We got to figure out what we're trying to talk about. We have to figure out exactly what the problem is when we don't respect people doing what they think to be is right without any ability to communicate why that might be wrong. It's harder to tell others that you're wrong, even when it's something so trivial as a piece of cream cheese on the side of your cheek. You feel weird telling people that you know to be doing the right thing. That's really hard when it becomes so overtly obvious to you, some of the corruption, some of the tasteless unfairness, lack of justice. When you see that in your places of coveted office, when you see that in your positions of power, when you see people stepping beside the lines, you start to get a feeling that you're in the system. But I don't think you feel like you're in the system in the way that you're fighting in the system. You feel like a derivative effect of the system. You feel like a unit of information that's being played. You feel like a character. And that's part of the problem. Does all sides not feel this? Do we want to be able to state what we mean? I think so. Mayday, Mayday, people. And I don't think that's what we're focusing on. We're talking about a prototype as if it's the coveted final scripture. We are talking about a system which is meant to be shaken as if it is a pillar of certainty in a sort of altruistic panic, right? We need to be more educated. We need to understand why we get so horribly upset about the issues of this world without a meaningful way to state why we feel it. Victims of scale, I say again and again. Why can't we fight back? You have to ask that. Why can't I do something about the people that I think are hurting me? What elements of control have been built for me? What basilisk has stared me down, stated, this is where you will walk, and have you accepted that? No, this is stupid, If we're talking about trust, if we're talking about authority, we have to talk about the deconstruction of that authority, the deconstruction of the allegiance to what once was a good thing. Religion even, we can go into that dimension, but parents are the easiest way to get this idea across. Think about how you're controlled as a young person. Think about how that release of control is. Think about the very mature execution that parents have to step through as they're relinquishing control from their agent. How does that work at the scale of a nation? How does that same trust, allegiance, indignance, rebellion, how does that all occur when you scale it to 300 plus million people? That's what I like to talk about, because that's what we're experiencing today. Why do you rebel? When you are with your family, you know how to operate, you know what works for your system, and you try to hold on to that momentum that comes with that experience. And this is obvious, but it's also obviously missed in a lot of the ways that we talk about deconstruction from a previously powerful system. The things people say to keep themselves silent or comforted are the things in that you are trying to escape from. There is a logic behind a desire to search for something more, but there is also a logic to get them to simply just do exactly what you're doing and not think that there is anything more that they could do when you become their age. We have been brought up in a system which promises change, which promises growth, which teaches shaking the table is a necessary element to growing past the festering, rotting wounds of the existing world from before. If we cannot find a way to have a dialogue, to navigate that forward, we risk becoming incoherently misunderstood between each other, between our nations, between any system that we wish to accomplish good work. I say Mayday, Mayday. We are not communicatively strong. We don't have values as a nation which helps pinpoint exactly why the individual feels a need to rebel. We cannot help people if they cannot understand the systems in which they enact the most efficacy. This is the whole problem I sort of allude to. A basilisk that we've referred to in a lot of online debates and dialogues is the thing I'm fearful of. It's not that it's super intelligence, it's not that it's all-encompassing, but it's encompassing just enough to become an evolutionary pandemic which takes over this landscape. Look at how we talk to each other. Look at how the powerful people, some expertly communicate the lines in which You prove your virtuousness without a responsibility and bearings of the sustainable systems which keep the power held. But I think there is something to this. There is some sort of control and power in this world which relinquishes people's ability to make sustainable change. Whether that's an economic encumbrance, whether that's a sort of attention disassociation, whatever rhetorical mess that we have the second you step into the digital space. This is a world made for how it behaves. It's a world that we bestow people so much pride, so much power for having a faith in nothing. How do I talk about this? I see myself falling on both sides of the spectrum nearly daily. Okay, why do we bestow so much power, so much accredited worth to confidence? Our world is full of cowards. Our world is full of people, nobody without reasonable motivation, without reasonable assistance, without reasonable support from their people. Why do we give so much unfounded confidence? Our nation is built upon people saying and trying their absolute fucking best to keep up with what they said. That faith that we attribute to many of these people, that idea to predict the future, and if they get lucky, doesn't matter. They were confident and they pushed through. That tenet is one of the most weaponized vehicles of our nation. And I see it in multiple places. There's a pinpoint, this exact principle that if I say something, it will happen. It's amazingly difficult. It's amazingly difficult for us to help pinpoint who is a true predictor, because the problem is the basilisk that knows the plane knows how to trick people into believing that they are the all-knowing, okay? What do you do when you are able to rhetorically influence people by absolutely slamming their face with the measure rather than referring to the goal? The reason I say Mayday, Mayday is that nobody is aware of the very possibility of a basilisk. Nobody is aware of the power in front of them. Nobody's able to see it occur over their existence. They're not able to pay attention enough to our systems. The whole reason I'm bringing up this issue of parental control, of deconstruction, is this whole idea of allegiance. When you're talking to someone and it feels like a brick wall, that brick wall is the problem. I argue allegiance and the building of trust is how that wall is built. It builds a sort of allergy to certain types of information, certain tones. I've felt it myself. Where does that allergy come from and where was it built? We have social architects in this world building these fantastical systems. We need to build tools which help us focus down on this problem. Be careful what you pledge allegiance to. Because for God's sake, Mayday, Mayday.